Thank you all. Go ahead and be seated. Stay seated. You're doing it. Be seated. Thank you. We got to get to work. Thank you all for coming. Please be seated. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the warm welcome. And thanks for caring about the future of our country, because that's what we're here to discuss. Before I get to the Social Security issue, I do want to thank some people. First, I want to thank the Greece Athena Middle and High Schools for letting us use this fantastic facility. It really is beautiful. Yeah. It's a fantastic place, isn't it? Yes, sir. Yeah. I want to thank Helen Wall and Dick Snyder. Helen is the principal of the high school. Dick Snyder is the principal of the middle school. I want to thank all the teachers. I want to thank the superintendent. I want to thank all the folks who care a lot about making sure the kids get educated here in this part of the world. I'm sorry Laura's not here. Yeah, you probably would rather have her here than me, wouldn't you? Anyway. Well, I know, but you thought it. You didn't say it, but I could tell you thought it. You're not the only person here who feels that way, I want you to know. She's doing great. She's on a trip promoting the freedom agenda. She's made it very clear to people in the Middle East, you can't have a complete society unless women participate fully in the society in the Middle East. I'm really proud of her. And I'm a fortunate man that she said yes when I asked her to marry me back in Midland, Texas. She's a great First Lady. I'm looking forward to having her come home tonight, back to the White House. I thank Congressman Tom Reynolds. He's an effective United States congressman who cares a lot about this district. I'm proud to call him friend. I'm proud to call Congressman Shirley Bullard friend as well. Sherry is from the district next door. I've known him for a long time. He's a good, thoughtful man who's a fine United States congressman. Congressman Jim Walsh is with us today. He, too, is a fine United States congressman. And I was proud to be traveling with Congressman Randy Cool. He's a freshman member of the House of Representatives, doing a great job. Thank you all for coming. They wanted to ride on Air Force One. I was proud to make room for them. They want to ride back on Air Force One. And they probably want a meal on Air Force One. So save up your appetite, fellas. You got a good meal coming. I want to thank all the state and local officials who've joined us today. I'm proud you're here. There's two athletes in the audience I want to pay recognition to. First of all, a person you all know well, really a fine member of the community, member of the NFL Hall of Fame, Jim Kelly. Thank you for coming. Good to see you again, Jim. And at the other end of the age spectrum is a fine athlete from this part of the world. I just met her. As you know, I'm a baseball person. I love baseball. The fact that somebody would pitch a perfect game at any level of baseball is amazing. The fact that a person would pitch a perfect game and strike out every batter is even more amazing. So welcome a fantastic pitcher in the representing the Dodgers baseball team from Little League Baseball, Katie Brannell. Thanks for coming. And finally, one other person before I get to the topic at hand I'd like to introduce is a woman named Georgianne Schaufel. Georgianne is a volunteer. And the reason I bring up people who volunteer is I want to remind you that the true strength of this country lies in the hearts and souls of our citizens. That if you want to be a participant in America and in the future of America, volunteer to make somebody's life better. Feed the hungry, help find shelter for the homeless. Georgianne is involved with the literacy volunteers of Rochester program, helping somebody learn to read. I can't think of a better way to pass on a gift from one generation to the next than to mentor somebody, particularly somebody who needs to learn to read. My point is this: serve your community and serve your country by taking time out of your busy lives to volunteer to make somebody's life better, to answer that universal call to love a neighbor just like you'd like to be loved yourself. I don't know where Georgianne is. Where are you, Georgianne? Thanks for coming. Thanks for being a great role model. We got a lot to do in Washington, D.C. One of the big issues, of course, is Social Security. Although yesterday there was some progress made, I'm pleased that the Senate is moving forward on my judicial nominees who were previously being blocked. These nominees have been waiting years for an up or down vote on the Senate floor, and now they'll get one. It's about time we're making some progress. It's important for this nation to address issues. I believe the job of the president is to confront problems, not to pass them on to future presidents or future generations. I believe my job in representing everyone who lives in this country is, if I see a problem, is to say to the United States Congress, let's work together to solve the problem. And folks, we got a problem when it comes to Social Security. First, let me start by saying that Franklin Roosevelt did a good thing when he created the Social Security system. Social Security has been an important part of a lot of people's lives in America. The Social Security system created by Franklin Roosevelt provided a safety net for people in their retirement. And it worked. There are a lot of people still in this country counting on their Social Security check. And therefore, I want to start by saying to people who are getting their check, people who were born prior to 1950, the system will not change when it comes to you. The system has got plenty of money in it to make sure you get your check. And the reason I have to say that is because I understand how the Social Security issue has worked in the past. Somebody like me talks about it, and then somebody comes in behind by telling seniors really what he's saying, he's going to take away your check. That's old style scare politics, but it is a part of the American system. And so people have got to understand, when we start talking about Social Security, to strengthen the Social Security system for generations to come, to deal with the problem I'm about to describe to you, that if you're a senior in Greece, New York, you're going to get your check. It's the folks coming up that you need to worry about. See, if you're a grandmother, you're going to get your check. You need to be worried about your grandson. And we're about to talk to a generation of folks from this part of the world about Social Security. Now, here's the reason I'm being able to bring it up. That the pay-as-you-go system in Social Security is confronting some serious demographic difficulties. Now, the system is pay-as-you-go. That means when you pay in, we go ahead and pay out. Like your payroll tax goes into not into a trust that we hold for your account. Your payroll tax goes into account, and we pay out the money for the retirees, and with any money left over, we spend it on general government. It's important for people to understand that aspect of Social Security. In other words, it's not a trust. In other words, we're not taking your money and holding it for you and then giving it back to you when you retire. We're taking your money, we're spending it on current retirees, and in that more money is coming in that needs to go out for the retirees. We're spending on other programs. And all that's left behind in Social Security is a group of file cabinets with IOUs in it. That's the way the system works. It's called pay-as-you-go. Now, what's going to change from today in terms of the pay-as-you-go system is that there's a lot of people getting ready to retire. I happen to be one of them. At least I reached retirement age in 2008. So I like to remind people that's a convenient date for me. Particularly the end of 2008. And there are a lot of people like me. We're called the baby boomers. I'm looking at some baby boomers out there. As a matter of fact, by the time the baby boomers fully retire, there's going to be over 70 million of us getting paid by younger workers who are paying through payroll, our retirement through payroll taxes. Today, there's about 40 million retirees. So you see, a lot more people are going to be having to be taken care of in the retirement system through the pay-as-you-go system. And not only that, we're going to live longer than the previous generation. And not only that, our benefits are going to rise faster. At least the promised benefits will rise faster than a previous generation. So you got a lot of people who will be living longer, getting paid greater benefits, with fewer people paying into the system. In 1950, there were some 16-to-1 workers paying into the system for each beneficiary. Today, there's 3.3 workers per every beneficiary. Soon, there's going to be 2 workers for every beneficiary. So I think you're beginning to get a sense of the math. A lot of us are going to get greater benefits. We're going to live longer with fewer of the young people paying in the system to take care of us. Now, what ends up happening under that type of system is that in 2017, the system starts to go into the red. More money going out than coming in on Social Security benefits. For Social Security benefits related to payroll taxes. And it gets worse every year. 2027, it's projected will be $200 billion in the hole. $200 billion more of benefits going out than payroll taxes coming in. Every year worse after that until 2041. All those the paper in those file cabinets in West Virginia are just eaten up, bankrupt. The system's bust. What we're asking youngsters to do is to contribute money through payroll taxes into a system that'll be broke in 2041 unless we do something about it. And so that's the problem, and it's a real problem. My friend Tim Penny, former congressman from Minnesota, is going to describe the problem to you in further detail. Now, I have a duty not only to describe the problem, I believe I have a duty to come forth and say, let's do something about it, and here's some ideas to the United States Congress. I did it. I stood up in front of the Congress at my State of the Union. I said, here's a problem. By the way, here's some ideas. All ideas are on the table, except running up the payroll tax rate, which I think would hurt the economy. All ideas are on the table. Bring them forward. And then I further refine that by talking about some of these ideas. And the reason I'm doing it is because I understand if we wait, it costs $600 billion a year more every year we wait. See, if we don't do anything, if we don't come up with a solution to permanently solve this problem, it is conceivable a younger generation of Americans will have to pay an 18% payroll tax. Or benefits will have to be cut by 30%. Or the rest of government will have to be cut substantially in order to make sure that the promises that have been made or promises that will be kept. And so here's some ideas Congress needs to consider. First of all, that a future generation should receive benefits equal to or greater than the benefits enjoyed by today's seniors. That seems like a reasonable principle as we go forward. Secondly, that the Social Security system should be designed such, the future Social Security. By the way, if you're born prior to 1950, nothing changes. What I'm talking about here doesn't pertain to you. You're going to get your check. The system's going to be exactly the way it is. There's plenty of money in it to take care of you. It's the younger folks that need to be paying attention to what I'm talking about. And so I think a second principle ought to be this. If you've worked all your life, that you should not retire in poverty. That's a principle that makes sense. We can design a system that supports that concept. And here's the way you do it. It's called progressive indexing. That's a Washington kind of thing, you know. It says that if you're in the, for example, a guy named Posen, who Tim knows well, came up with this concept. It said that if you're a poorest 30% of the workers, nothing will change in terms of how your benefits increase. Right now, the benefits, by the way, increases are tied to wages. If you're the top 1% of workers in terms of income, your benefits would increase by the rate of inflation, not by the rate of wage. Your benefits increase, but not as fast as the folks at the bottom end of the spectrum. And if you're in between, depending upon your income, your benefits will increase somewhere between the rate of wage and the rate of price. Now, incredibly enough, structuring the system this way when it comes to benefit increases will get about a significant portion of the problem permanently solved. I think it makes sense for Congress to consider this idea. It says you'll get a benefit equal to or greater than the previous generation. That at the very minimum, your benefit will grow at the rate of inflation. If you're poor, your benefit will grow at the rate of wage increases. And that you won't retire into poverty. And there are other things we can do to permanently solve the problem completely. I say permanently solve it because you might remember 1983. Were you in the Congress then, Tim? Yeah, first term in the Congress. Tim came together with others. Ronald Reagan was the president. Tip O'Neill was the speaker. We had a problem in Social Security. They came together and put together what they called a 75-year fix. Here we are 22 years later. The 75-year fix didn't stick for 75 years. It's time to fix this deal once and for all. And there are some good ideas I put on the table. Let me tell you one other good idea that I want people to think about before we get to our panelists here, our folks we're going to be discussing this issue with. And that is that I think that as we permanently solve the system, that we ought to make it a better deal for younger workers by allowing younger workers to take some of their own payroll taxes and set it aside in what is called a voluntary personal savings account. First, notice I said voluntary. In other words, the government should say to a younger worker, if you want to, you can put some of your own money aside. You don't have to. If you're uncomfortable with watching your money grow through a conservative mix of bonds and stocks, you don't have to do that. You can keep it the way, into the system. And you'll get your check. If you're in the bottom 30%, your benefits over time will grow with wages. If you're in the top 1%, they'll grow with inflation. And if you're somewhere in between, they'll grow depending upon your income, but greater than the rate of inflation. Secondly, it's called a personal account. That means you own it. It's an account the government cannot take away. So why would we do this? Why would we think of this idea? Well, first of all, with your money and your payroll taxes, after all, it's your money, is earning about a 1.8% rate of return over time in the Social Security system. You can do better than that. You can do better than that with T-bills, which have very little risk to them, if any at all. You can do a lot better than that in a conservative mix of bonds and stocks. I mean, they say that over time, you should be able to average at least 4.6%. Now, over a lifetime, that is a significant amount of money relative to the 1.8% because money compounds, money grows. For example, if you're making $8 an hour and you put your money in and you're allowed to set aside a third of your payroll taxes, $8 an hour over your life, and you're allowed to set a third of your payroll taxes aside in a personal savings account, and you earn the 4.5% rate of return, which is definitely achievable, particularly when you look at the history of conservative mix of investments. By the time it comes, you reach retirement age, you'll have earned $100,000 in your nest egg. That will be a part of your Social Security retirement system. So you'll get benefits out of the current system, out of the system that's reformed. Plus, you got $100,000 that you call your own. If you're, say you're a police officer and a nurse and they enter the workforce in 2011 and you set aside money and you make, the average salary those folks make over time, and you set aside a third of your payroll taxes, both of you do, by the time both retire, they have about $669,000 in a personal savings account. Money grows over time. The higher the rate of return, the faster your money grows, and the more you end up with. A lot of people are able to understand that. You know why? Because we're into a 401k culture. When Penny and I were growing up, we didn't have 401ks. The other day I was in an automobile manufacturing plant in Mississippi. I'm sitting with a lot of line workers. I said, how many of you got 401ks? A lot of hands went up. A lot of people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, now understand what it means to watch your money grow. This isn't a new concept that's in American society. This is something that's taken place throughout all of society. And I think it makes sense to understand the investor class doesn't belong to a privileged few, but the investor class ought to be extended to everybody who lives in America if that's what you want, if that's what you choose. I like the idea of somebody saying, here's your asset, and you can leave it to whomever you want. And the more people who are able to do that in our society, the better off society is. See, I think government ought to promote an ownership society. We ought to encourage more people to own their own home. Encourage entrepreneurs to be able to take risk and own their own business. And in this case, encourage Americans from all walks of life, if they so choose, to manage their own retirement account. And I say manage it. You know, it's your money. You're going to have some choices to make when it comes to a personal savings account. You can't take it to the lottery, by the way. You know, notice I've been stressing conservative mix of bonds and stocks because we want this account to grow and be a part of a modern safety net for you in your retirement. And so there'll be some guidelines. And I can predict to you that it works because a lot of other people have watched their money grow in the same kind of accounts, including people who work for the federal government. See, we have got what in Washington what's called a thrift savings plan. And members of the United States Senate, for example, can choose, if they so desire, to set aside some of their own money in a personal savings account, a voluntary personal savings account. And a lot of people like it. I think I was doing one of these events with Senator McCain, who told me that his rate of return on his money was like 7% over the last 20 years. That's a lot better than the 1.8% we now get for you in the Social Security system. And so my attitude about this issue on thrift savings plans when I speak to members of the Congress is pretty simple. If the idea of taking some of your own money and setting it aside in a conservative mix of bonds and stocks is good enough for you, Mr. Senator, it is good enough for workers all across the United States of America. You'll be happy to hear Senator McCain agrees with me because he's seen his money grow. Now, a personal savings account would be a part of a Social Security retirement system. It'd be a part of what you would have to retire when you reach retirement age. As I mentioned to you earlier, we're going to redesign the current system. If you've retired, you don't have anything to worry about. It's the third time I've said that. I'll probably say it 3 more times. See, in my line of work, you got to keep repeating things over and over and over again for the truth to sink in, to kind of catapult the propaganda. But if you choose to have one of these accounts, notice I keep saying, if you choose, the government's not going to tell you you have to do this. I think the government ought to give you the opportunity to set up one of these accounts, and the account becomes a part of your retirement plan. It's your own asset. It's something you leave to somebody, whomever you choose. And it makes the system eminently more fair. Now, with those thoughts in mind, we got a problem, and here's some ideas on how to solve it. I've asked Congressman Tim Penny, right out of the state of Minnesota, a person who's followed this issue a lot. He happens to be of a different political party than I am, but nevertheless, we both share the common goal of doing our duty as involved citizens to permanently solve the problem of Social Security today. Welcome, Congressman. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. You mentioned earlier that you were bringing me along to sort of add some additional perspective to this issue, but there's little more that needs to be said given the description that you've just provided, because you've laid out very effectively where we're at and why change is needed. I would simply reinforce some of what you've said. Doing nothing is not an option, and unfortunately, on this issue, there seems to be a loud chorus of folks that are just saying no to virtually everything that you've put forward, and that's unfortunate because we need a dialogue on this issue, and the sooner the better. You know, this program is 70 years old this summer on August 14th. Social Security will celebrate its 70th birthday, and we really need to talk about where we want this program to be 70 years from now. And I don't think we want to be right back at the same place 70 years from now, talking about more cuts and splices and patches to kind of keep the program afloat, because we've done a lot of that over the last 70 years, and what it's meant is that for each succeeding generation of workers, we pay more and more payroll taxes into this system, and then none of it gets saved in our own name to help provide for our own retirement, which then means we rely on the next generation of workers to put even more money in to take care of our needs. And at some point, I think we've got to get ahead of that curve, and that's what this debate is all about. A lot has